members of Cameroon's parliament, and that implies the 180-member National Assembly, as well as the 100-man and woman Senate, were flung open Monday, March 13 for this year's first ordinary session. The session, with the renewal of executive bureau members high on the agenda, opens within a particular context, the protracting Anglophone crisis. And on that score, we ask, is it time to envisage leadership change in Parliament as a means of toning down anti-government sentiments within Anglophone communities? This is Tough Talk, and we'll be right back. So the last time I checked, he was a researcher, he is still one, and a passionate critic of wrongdoing within the circles of government. Michael Mancho, it's a pleasure to have you. It's been long.
Of course, Divine, and it's really been long indeed. And I'd like to say that it's really a pleasure to be here. First of all, I think this is my first time up here on Tough Talk, and at least I think it is going to be worth it.
Thanks for coming, Mike. Tough Talk, for your information, is still struggling to stand on its feet. And the information we get is that it's already attracting tons and loads of attention within especially the Anglophone community in Cameroon. But I did not have to do any fact-checking to be able to determine what he has been doing for the last time, since the last time we met, if you don't mind. Elie Smith is a passionate journalist. It's always good to have you, Bryce.
Thank you very much for inviting me, and I'll always be here when need be.
So the doors of Parliament were flung open on Monday for the first ordinary session for the year 2017. And in keeping with parliamentary tradition, Mike, I think I'll rather start with you on this. The speeches were made by the oldest members of the House. In other words, the deans of the National Assembly is called Eno Tanjong, and then that of the Senate is called Fon V.E. Mukete. Curiously, both men are of Anglophone linguistic fabric. Is that something to bank on?
Of course, and it is something that we really need to analyze critically, because I don't know whether it's by providence or it's by luck or it's by chance. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it.
They didn't fix their ages.
Of course. I mean, that both of them comes from the Anglophone regions. And going by their status, we know that they are the oldest members of the upper house and the lower house, respectively. And I think that one of the things that we talk about age is an issue of wisdom. Okay. Because if you lie I think that Mukete is about 90-something years.
96 years old.
96
exactly.
years old. And if I should go by his age, and I say that if Mukete means his words to tell the truth at the age of 96, then he will be a liar until death. So, of course, and that's what we were expecting from him yesterday, to speak the truth, okay, to tell the parliament actually what is happening. I want to compare him to actually to a hen, of course, that gathers the young and then protects the young. What is the role of a parliament? And that is the question that I seek to ask now. A parliamentarian or a senator is somebody who is supposed to represent the people. And it represents the people's views, their aspirations, their struggles, their suffering, and all whatnot. And of course, it is not by chance that he had to address. Well, even the senator or the oldest member of parliament was from the Francophone region. I think that it was incumbent on him to be able to speak the truth and tell exactly the parliament what is happening in Cameroon, because it is their role. It's their role as a people's representative to speak on behalf of the people. No. And I think that they don't have. Without any fear, they have to speak the truth.
Okay. Now coming over to you, Elie Smith. At the National Assembly, Eno Tanjong, the oldest member, or in other words, the Dean of the House, castigated incidents of arson. Arson is like, premeditated setting a structure ablaze, which happened at the Faculty of Medicines at the University of Bamenda, and also at the administrative block of Government High School, Akwaya. That's where Honorable Paul Aya Abine comes from. We'll probably talk about him in another edition of this program. But critics say that was a bad tone Eno Tanjong set for the upcoming deliberations in Parliament. That's not what Anglophones expected.
Yes, that's not what Anglophone expected, but I think as an MP, he had the right to say what he did. The thing is that where people are criticizing me is that arson is not a good thing, but he was a kind of economical in denouncing what was going wrong. People expected him as an Anglophone to denounce the 151 Anglophones who are in detention currently in Yaoundé, and also denounce the internet ban that Cameroon has set an appalling record for 52 or 56 days without internet. No other country on this continent has ever done that.
Okay.
So that's where people said he was unjust. Nobody supports violence. But if you have to, or he is better placed to understand that violence begets violence. Had it been the government did not act foolishly as they did by arresting people who were peaceful demonstrators or who were peaceful activists, I don't think that the extreme elements would have come up to do what they are doing. And the other problem that he failed to understand or to point out was that how come that the government cannot arrest those arsonists, but the government is quick at arresting somebody like Mancho BBC, Agbobala.
Who never cut pants down.
Exactly. So I think he had failed. It's a disgrace on the part of Mr. Eno Tanjong. It is a disgrace, and it calls for question. That's the reason why Anglophones have been suffering in this country, because you have Anglophones who are better placed in strategic positions, but they are unable to voice the grievances of the constituencies or the people that they stand to represent.
Thanks very much, Elie Smith, for your first intervention. On his part, and we're talking about him, 96-year-old Fon V.E. Mukete, who is the oldest member of the 100-man Senate, well, 100-man and woman Senate, actually lauded President Paul Biya for creating the National Commission on Bilingualism. Is the Anglophone problem hinged on bilingualism, Michael?
And that is just one of the mistakes that is being made. And I understand that is why up to now the commission members are not yet appointed. Because I realized that the head of state realized it was a mistake to kind of start creating a commission on bilingualism. What is a commission on bilingualism? Because going by its principles, its rules and regulations, the Commission of Bilingualism is supposed to have as members really people who are of moral standing. And of course, at this point in time, we actually went chasing the wind to think that the Anglophone problem lies strictly on the issue of language.
Right.
And I don't think that it lies on the issue. It goes far deeper than that. And I even still come to emphasize on the issue of what is an Anglophone. Now, I would like to tell people who think that Anglophones are, or Francophones are people who speak either English or French, I think that Anglophones now is an issue of the mind. It is undefinable. You cannot define who is an Anglophone now by the issue of language. It's an issue that is inherent, an issue of culture, issue of the mind. And therefore, when you think that you want to reduce the problems of the people who have no jobs, people who are marginalized appointments, people who have no roots, infrastructure, whatsoever, and don't want to reduce it to an issue of language, I don't know how language is going to translate to bring about the economic boom of the people.
How would you call residents of the northwest and southwest of Cameroon? Those, I mean, that's former West Cameroon. How do you call them?
Of course. Now, Divine, I don't want to go linguistically because I know there's one we call Anglophile, and Anglophile and Anglophone. Anglophiles are actually those who love and speak English. Right. But I think that Anglophones are residents of the north and southwest. But the way Anglophones are defined in Canada is not the same way they are defined in Cameroon, at least for now.
All right.
Because for now, we are having a new wind of awareness, which shows that the issue of Anglophones, Francophone in Cameroon is a different one from the way it is defined in Canada, which is also a bilingual country.
How do they define it?
Now, you define it in such, I mean, you know, actually, like what most people define is that you have to speak English or you have to speak, but now, we left from linguistics and we went to geography.
Okay.
Meaning that in geography, we are situating the people of the Anglophone, southwest and northwest region. Now, another argument came because the Francophones too, they said they have gotten married to that side of the country, and therefore we want to set an issue of geography. Some of them who fall within that part will still be Anglophone. Now, we have left from the issue of geography to come an issue of feeling. Meaning that what? There are some certain practices that Anglophones they practice that a Francophone cannot practice. Divine, I must let you know this. When you go to the Anglophone field, Anglophone zone, and you see the way the people live their life, first, in terms of social life, secondly, in terms of economics, in terms of, I mean, health-wise, the way Anglophones, they keep their places clean is also a definition of Anglophone. The way Anglophones, they socialize, it has a definition, it adds to the definition of an Anglophone. And therefore, when you look at it wholly, you realize that the Anglophones actually is not something, it's not only reduced to the part of the linguistics, it's deeper than that.
I must remind our viewers that recently you were a PhD student at the University of Douala. Of course, your flair and eloquence It's not a surprise to me at all. But turning over to Elie Smith, listening to V.E. Mukete, many observers quickly remarked that he lost the verbal firepower he had cultivated in recent months. Remember when the lawyers first went on strike, he was one of those bold enough to have, vented support for the movement. Could his speech yesterday, could it have been vetted, screened and some parts of it pulled out?
Yes.
Would you say that?
Yes, I am tempted to say that it was perhaps vetted. But even you vet someone's speech, he has the content in his head. He would have got to...
He does not need the script.
He doesn't need the script. I think the problem is that he is a typical representation of most so-called Anglophone elites. And I beg to come back to differ with you a tad. The problem, what is with Mancho, what is going on currently is a nativist revolution, which means that
that's another new word. Can you break it?
Yeah,
down?
well, I want to break it.
Nativist.
Yes, I want to break it. In breaking it, I want to say it is something that purely focuses on people of the northwest and southwest regions. Now,
natives of the northwest and
southwest region who have the values that along the line you had to enumerate. And if you want to make the parallels with Canada, if you are in Canada, a Canadian who is from the Quebec province must be somebody who is born there and who speaks French and who has the values of the Quebecois. Now, this thing called...
How do you define, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, Elie Smith, how do you define a child whose parents are from, East Cameroon, who finds himself giving birth to in Akwaya?
Yes.
He grows up speaking English. He grows up getting indoctrinated with Anglophone values. Is that a native Anglophone?
Yes, he is a native Anglophone because he was born in Anglophone Cameroon. He has the shared value and history of Anglophone Cameroonian. He is. Okay. Now, the thing is that you have a case, which is a sad one that happened with Mr. Charles Omar Beto, who was born in Tico, grew up in Tico, was an MP for the UPC. But when he went into Parliament, instead of defining or defending the people of Tico, he went and was trying to defend people in the Sanaga Maritime Division. That was a shame. He is one of those type of things do happen. But if you are born in Anglophone Cameroon, even if you are Beti, Bassa, Yabasi, or whatever, and then you believe in the values of Anglophone Cameroon and you share the sufferings that the Anglophones are suffering, you are an Anglophone. There's no question about it. That's why I say it's a nativist. Okay. Now, there are a number of people who have now sent their children to go and study in Anglophone Cameroon. Those people are Anglophones by default, but they don't share the same sufferings that people of Anglophone extraction, pure ones, are suffering. Okay. And that's why people like Mr. Mukete, to me, with due respect to the position that he has, I think he has lost a golden opportunity to defend the Anglophone tooth and nails. I want to believe that those things he was doing initially was that he was trying to, it was a bluff.
Bite and blow?
Exactly, it was a bluff because this is where he had a golden opportunity. Why didn't he, for Christ's sake, talk about it?
Now, the fact that the speeches, the opening speeches at the Senate and the National Assembly happened the way they did, is it driving you to a conclusion, Michael, that there will be no in-depth debate on the Anglophone crisis in Parliament?
Of course, you know that, I'm sorry to say this, anything that transpired in the National Assembly is something that has been tailored. It comes from above, from the head of state. Okay. There is no lie about it. And once the head of state says, you remember when we were struggling about this issue of the Anglophone problem, I remember there is the president of House Committee who came up openly and said, the president of a republic has said he doesn't want any debate on federalism. All right. You see, already, means that what? They gave somebody a goat and they remain with the rope pulling. And that is the same thing that is happening in the National Assembly. That the president of the Republic is going to dictate what is going to happen according to what he feels. Because he knows that if they open up the debate, there are other Francophones parliamentarians who are sympathizing, or you remember, or you know, Martin, yes. Of course, they are sympathizing with us, and they feel that this is a problem to be addressed. Okay. But because there is someone who feels that if we start addressing this problem, it may not have the necessary conclusion, the necessary end that he wants. I'm sure he's going to actually give the agenda of how that's to be done. And I'm afraid to say that this is all about the issue.
Now, it is a fault of those MPs because they don't have the courage. So they are disgraced. That's the reason why next time they should not be voted. It's not because the president orders you to do one thing. I have an example. In Nigeria, when Obasanjo wanted to change the constitution to elongate to have 3 mandates, the majority at the parliament were the PDP MPs, but the PDP rejected the advances of Obasanjo, even though he had sweetened it with $50,000.
That is an Anglophone democracy.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, if you don't mind, gentlemen, let me rush you up to the National Assembly and find out what Eno Tanjong said. We've been talking about him since the start of the show. And this is an excerpt from his speech yesterday.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this obviously pushes me to broach here what is henceforth agreed, termed the Anglophone problem. This problem has for some time now triggered off social unrest in the northwest and southwest regions. Amongst the recent incidents in this regard, I would like to point out and castigate the arson that ravaged the Faculty of Medicine of the University in Bamenda in the night of 3rd March 2017, and the destruction of the administrative block of the Government High School, Akwaya, on 12th February 2017. These incidents have the effect of reducing the pace of government effort aimed at infusing knowledge into the use of and of development of the nation. At the same time, I wish to commend the counter-move to normalize things. The political elite, religious figures, members of the civil society, traditional rulers have all joined the head of state in appealing for dialogue and peace. And I encourage all past, present, or future initiatives in this regard. I hail in particular the recent creation by the head of state, His Excellency Paul Biya, of a national commission on the promotion of bilingualism and multiculturalism.
So that was Eno Tanjong speaking there at the opening session of the National Assembly in Yaoundé, and precisely he was talking into the microphone of our Yaoundé Bureau Chief, Beatrice Ngamo. Thanks very much. And well, when this crisis actually was still in the budding stages, that's about November last year, the same parliament was in session. Some say, Michael, that they failed, the members of parliament failed to take the bull by the horns then, because apart from the likes of Honorable Joseph Weber, and that's going to be a second major talking point this morning, that apart from him, no other person actually made enough noise about the Anglophone problem.
How could they make a noise when a real a Minister of Justice will tell an MP, c'est vous qui avez voulu? How would they make noise? Of course, you remember Joseph Weber said it all, and he said he confronted a minister who had to make a sweeping statement to say, we are the one who decided to join them. Okay. And of course, why should their problem be our problem? We did, and therefore we should carry our problems in our hands. No, who cares? Who cares? Even people are dying. Even children are raped. Even if there is no road infrastructure, if there is no development in Anglophone section, who cares? And of course, it is being fed in the National Assembly up to today Because if the president of the National Assembly, of course, who is supposed to be the head of, and who is supposed to be the eye of all the parliamentarians, I think that if hands are tied or the other parliamentarian, the president of the National Assembly was supposed to take his responsibility and be able to address the issue. But the fact that nobody said anything about this, it is what is even the most aching, because that is what makes the Anglophone feel that they are actually being sidelined because nobody cares to share in their problem, and therefore it's a cause for concern.
Others demand that, others add, Elie Smith, that senators and the MPs, they hardly look beyond their doorsteps. They hardly look beyond their noses.
Sure.
This thing was seen coming, but they were mute.
The simple reason is that most of them are unelected. They are appointed. And now,
but there are elections at the level of the National Assembly. The appointments at the level of the Senate, yes.
Yeah, the appointment, even at the, appointment at the level of the Senate, but elections at the lower chambers. Right. Those are pseudo elections because the reality that most of them got there simply because the electoral system in the country is rigged. And now even those who are elected because some UPC MPs, the SDF MPs, the UDC MPs, who are the opposition in parliament, most of them, I'm afraid to tell you that I'm disappointed because most of them, when they go to parliament, they simply tend to forget. Had it been we never had someone like Joseph Wiriba who stood up, some might say he was excessive, but we need to understand that he is an elected official. And when you are elected, you need to reflect what your base is telling you or is feeling. Since most of them even live in Yaoundé, that's what Albert Mokong used to say about the Anglophones in particular, because we cannot, I don't want to accuse the Francophones. The problem is that most of the Anglophone so-called elites who are in Yaoundé are a group of bourgeoisie, comprador, collaborationists who are there lying to their Francophones, friends, of the reality that is getting place in Anglophone Cameroon. I think the parliament really showed us that they are not a reflection of the people who voted them, which is an opportunity now for Cameroonians when the next legislative elections comes up. If anybody, a man or a woman, is not able to give us his or her credentials of being a pure representative of the people, even if he is of the SDF or the UPC or the UDC, he has to be kicked out of parliament and then replaced by someone who is really going to defend them there.
I know a lot of people who buy that point of view because they argue that the so-called elite, and especially those in parliament, have been using the people at the grassroots to bargain for personal gains at the level of parliament. We listened to a couple of CPDM MPs who were saying yesterday at the start of the March session of Parliament that effective decentralization may be a big response to the ongoing crisis in the northwest and southwest regions of Cameroon. But the SDF members of Parliament rather argue that only federalism is going to be the start of a solution to the crisis. Here is one of them. He's called Awudu Mbaya, and he spoke once again to Yaoundé Bureau Chief Ngamo Beatrice.
When the going is not good in a nation like ours, which is sick now, Parliament should play a vital role. I am not satisfied with the speech of the eldest member. Part of our nation is in trouble. When this arm is sick, it means the whole body is sick. The two Anglophone regions are not going to school, they are not working. Military people torturing people every day, arresting youth like you. We should sit down and have the courage to address the situation. Where there's no justice, there's bound to be turbulence. We need to ask the government to have what we call true dialogue. Only dialogue solves problems. We should not play about, with some kind of dialogue which is just facial. We need to sit down and handle matters which are our own matters for the benefit and for the betterment of our nation. This nation is our nation. We should not be playing as if the nation belongs to someone else. I am standing here and calling on the government to start implementing some of those things that they agreed with the consortium during the dialogue. we parliamentarians will see some of those things. We can now go down and tell the people, look, government has good faith. Government has already started implementing this, and then we can be able to convince the people. You don't maltreat your own people. You cannot stand here and make a statement, flashy statement, and you think that what is happening is not a serious matter. It is a very serious matter. Nobody wants to see the disintegration of this nation. This nation belongs to us, and we want to see the nation intact. And therefore, we also want peace. And where you need peace, there must be justice. People are afraid now to have dialogue or to sit with anybody who comes on behalf of the government, because you sit and talk the next moment, they arrest you. So people are now afraid. Let us make the environment conducive for good, frank talk and dialogue. Let us make the environment conducive for students to go back to school. They are afraid because when they are going to school, they see military people and they fear and they run away. Remove the military. We are not at war. We are not at war. And remove the military and reinstall internet. You want the children to go and study how do they make research, etc. Boko Haram declared outright war over there. Internet has never been disconnected in that part of the country. I say it because it hurts me that this country we have fought until it is at this level, and some people want it to be disintegrated. We don't want it. Where is the National Commission on Bilingualism? Where is it? Tell me where it is. The president signed a decree creating for how many months now? Where is it? You want me to tell you where it is? Tell the president to appoint the members and they go to work. If they can solve the problem, it will be better for all of us. We will be glad. We want, there is a problem. Let us have the courage to.
Speaking there to Ayaounde Bureau Chief Ngamo Beatrice. Hi, Annie Collins.
Hi, Divine. Welcome to Bamenda.
Oh, yeah. I am very happy to have you online now because since morning we gather you've been running and crisscrossing town. There's been a big fire somewhere.
Yes, at the Bamenda food market, the makeshift structures of the market that loaded with goods went down with flames. That was at about 2 a.m. Since then, the population has been gathering around. And those who have lost items worth millions of CFA francs because it has got to do with something like over 50 sheds that have gone down with the fire.
50
so
sheds.
Those who have lost property and even liquid cash have been sobbing and wailing and praying the heavens why this will happen to them. Well, we can't really say who would have behind it. But a criminal harm is suspected, you know. About 2 weeks back, the tables and other installations of people like butchers and other petty traders were gathered and set on fire. That is, and then a note is reported to have been placed there, warning that those who are opening when they're supposed to be ghost towns are going to see. And probably that's what they're seeing now.
So is Collins?
Yes.
So what's your suspicion converging on? Is it on the promoters of the ghost town operations? Who are you suspecting?
Well, as I say, pointers are directed towards probably those who are for the ghost town operations. Like I said, that a message was posted on their tables. So those who were selling on the ghost town day.
Okay. So
they have earlier been warned with the message, and that is probably what has the message that has been executed. The threat of the message that has been executed since about 2 a.m. of this Tuesday.
And as we speak, I also gather there's been another fire at somewhere around Commercial Avenue. Is that correct?
No, there isn't any fire around the Commercial Avenue now. We have been moving around town from the food market to around the commercial area. The city comes about, to be more precise, that's where we are at the moment.
All right.
And also to say, Divine, from the makeshift structures of the food market, like I said, so the fire already began crossing over to what they call the lock-up section of the market.
Okay.
And so it has engulfed a good number of sheds, about 10 sheds with loaded with cosmetics, shoes, and other ways. So
Has it been put out finally, Collins?
Yeah.
Has the fire been put out finally?
Yes, the fire was put out in the later hours of the very early morning.
Okay.
By the water tanks of the police this time around, in the police, because the emergency number, of the Army Rescue Unit, what you are out there called Sapé Pompier. So the Army Rescue Unit, the emergency number has had problems for quite some time now. So it was difficult for the boys of the firefighting unit to be called in.
Okay.
So the police was called in, and the water cannon that had been spraying water on demonstrators happened to have had some good use this time around to put out the fire.
Okay.
So as we speak, people have been trying to evacuate some of the goods, especially the food stuff. We don't know whether it will really be good for consumption. Because the water cannons, they carry not just ordinary water, the water mixed with some chemicals, and that is why it is itchy on the body. So we don't know if the chemicals can be good if it touches the food stuff, like what we have seen, the bags of corn, beans, rice, and other cereal have been carried away, probably for consumption somewhere.
Thanks very much, Collins. Now let's get to the crux of our discussions this morning. Of course, a major talking point has been the opening of the first ordinary session in Parliament for 2017. Is this a subject of discussion across Bamenda? Are they concerned?
Yes, they are concerned about the opening session of the National Assembly.
Okay.
The lawmakers, of course, should have something to give to offer the people by the time the March session of the assembly ends, or the lower and upper houses will end, because the problems, the so-called Anglophone problem in Cameroon. So many people are very expectant of what the parliamentarians are going to decide. They have been having the visits of many groups of people coming to try their hand in resolving the problem or bringing a lasting solution to the problem. And so this time around, they are expecting that the parliamentarians will do something this time in a block.
Okay.
Since you remember that the CPDM parliamentarians and the senators of the region earlier met some months ago and gave their stance on the matter. So now it's the entire lower and upper houses of the assembly that is expected to pronounce something in as far as the Anglophone problem is concerned.
Okay, Collins. The session begins just when Prime Minister Philemon Yang, in fact, barely days after he wrapped up his Northwest tour. And I hear he has been reduced to a laughing stock across the Northwest region, considering that after his departure, the status quo is maintained. Have classes resumed?
I really didn't get you well, Divine.
Well, the question is, has the PM been finally reduced to a laughing stock across the Northwest region, considering that he spent 1 week, in fact, most of last week, and that when he left the region, nothing seems to have changed? Have classes resumed?
Yes, nothing really has changed. The Prime Minister, the effect of his 1 week sojourn in the region is to be felt. The people are still fingers crossed to see if his appeal will yield some fruits. But for now, nothing as yet. And the people of the region feel that it has been some sort of wastage of the trip in outstation allowances, fuel, and other forms of expenditure. Because the Prime Minister just came to redo what the governor had already done.
Okay.
The people have been saying if the governor's trip was pretty better compared to that of the prime minister. You know, the prime minister being, I don't know, I should say, unbended, not flexible at all. So the people thought that they could have had a more subtle way of putting things. Because the governor's own trip that happened to have been with Governor too during his the tour of the region. So the governor was more flexible. I'm not like trying to pick the governor against his boss, but we are seeing facts that we found on the field.
Okay.
So the governor was more flexible. The prime minister, many people say, since he has been out there in Canada for about 30 years, is really too rigid, especially with the problem that has got to do with the mass. I know when you have to do the masses, you have to be to calm down,
make concessions
of the air conditioned offices, and then come down to the streets with them and crack some jokes there. But the prime minister just went straight to his speech after giving about 9 what he called myths against some of the beliefs that the people had in their minds. He debunked all of them, and then went straight to his speech. After that, it was the director of cabinet who spoke, and then question and answer. A few persons asked questions, and then he said it was over, and then the person was not going to speak. Next time, that's all. Yes, right.
I'm sorry, we are going to have to leave it here and then, hook up with you again on Thursday in the morning. Thanks very much for your contributions from Bamenda. Collins Anyi is our permanent correspondent, and of course, Bamenda Bureau Chief. Now, heading on to our next major talking point is Honorable Wiba Joseph missing in action. As expected in some quarters, many thought he was supposed to have answered present at this session of Parliament, Elie Smith.
Yes, he was supposed to have answered present because he is really a man of the people, a genuine MP who reflects what the constituency really wants him to. But unfortunately, according to reports that I read, I think from the Post newspaper, of which is, I cannot recall,
Monday's edition,
it appears he is under threat of being arrested. That's the reason why he may have not showed up. If that is the case, then the great question is, where is the solidarity among MPs, whether of the CPDM or of the SDF or CPDM or the opposition? So if that is the case, then it is a very dangerous precedent.
We're going to come back to the Post story on Honorable Joseph Wiba. Are you surprised, Michael Mancho, that he was, he is missing in action and that he answered present, rather absent at yesterday's opening session of Parliament?
A successor of the Nso warrior, someone from the descendants of the Nso warrior, and no one draws him a line. And of course, missing now, then I think that he's not a hero, because he has decided to receive the bullets on his back rather than on his chest.
Oh, in other words, you say it's like cowardice for him to...
Of course, that is sheer cowardice, because I know I received a message this morning and he said he has not had any solidarity from his colleague parliamentarians from the SDF, and that he felt that he was fighting already alone, that he thought he was going to be joined in this fight by his colleagues parliamentarians, and that appears all of them all abandoned him, and that his life, he has been receiving threats from the government. I think that this is somebody who has decided to die like a pelican. I think he was supposed to, even it means sacrificing himself with that laudable speech, with that kind of speech that he made in the National Assembly. I mean, the word was for Joseph Wiba, and we termed him Wilberforce, coming from just Wilberforce. And I thought, of course, Joseph Wiba escaping now, I mean, through the window to Nigeria, to the United States, as it is alleged. I think that this is really sheer cowardice for him, and I think that he needs to, even if he has to fight the war from abroad, I think he has already fallen.
You ought to remember, well, I'm not sure I'm reminding you, Michael Mancho, that, eminent Cameroonians of the likes of Ayapol Abine have been whisked off and are currently under detention at the Secretariat of State for Defense in Yaoundé. Well, the Post newspaper story Elie Smith was mentioning actually alleges that Honorable Wiba, MP for Jakiri in the Bui division, actually sneaked his way into Nigeria, got to the U.S. Embassy in Abuja, and from there he moved on to the U.S. But should MPs be pursued? Because Apparently, he was scared that his parliamentary immunity was going to be knocked off, and then to pave the way for his arrest. Should MPs who speak and relay the views of their constituencies and the electorate be pursued for airing those views?
No, they have not. They don't have to be. But now the problem is that some people think, I've heard some people, because I knew this was under preparation, that the thing is that where they wanted to prosecute him was that his declaration was tantamount to call for cessation. That is what some people say. But I have listened to that speech. I've watched it a time and over again. I didn't see any correlation with the call for cessation. But, well, I think it is unfair that if that is the case, I think they would have maybe invited him to explain himself better rather than trying to arrest him, because arresting him is pouring fuel on the fire. But on the other hand also, he made his bold, brilliant declaration that he was a sore warrior. But I think a sore warrior needed to confront his enemies till the end.
Up front.
But on the other hand, you know, our grave is littered with a number of heroes. But why would he accept to be killed or arrested if he thinks that going abroad might help him to attain the goals that he is gunning for?
And that leads me to this question, Michael and Mancho. Isn't going abroad or staying away and letting the heat cool off a bit another strategy to come back and probably win?
I don't think that is really a strategy. I rather think that one of the strategies that people pass through to get a better life is through expressing signs of heroism in their own home country, and now go abroad, like freedom fighters. Because and that way they are easily granted asylum.
Okay.
You know, that is what is happening. If you look in the past, you find that most of those people who have fought hard on the Anglophone issue are people who are living very well, good life abroad, because when they go, they are welcome, they are given asylum.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I think
no, what you are doing is that you are trying. No, you are trying to water down the sacrifices of the individual.
No, not watering down.
It's easy to say what you are saying, but why don't you take the whole step?
There are people like Nelson Mandela who fought and remained in their hometown, and they went to prison. What is wrong with going to prison for 50 years if you are fighting for the people? Means that you are fighting a war that you are afraid of.
No, if Mandela had the opportunity to escape, he would have escaped.
He had the opportunity,
No.
and he didn't. He accepted to be in prison for 27 years, and I think that he came out a strong man. And of course, he was celebrated. I think that this is what we should do. All of us, I don't think that you are indifferent to this fight. You are in Cameroon. Are you indifferent to this fight? It is a fight that actually you feel. You could also say that I will not sit on this television set and speak, because now we realize that anybody who speaks about it is being haunted. And of course, two of us sitting here to talk is because we are in solidarity, and we feel that we also have to contribute. We don't have to stay put and stay quiet in the face of injustices, in the face of threats, in the face of difficult life for our people and whatsoever. I think that is it about it. Okay. That we have to fight and fight to the end. We should not be a conqueror in things fall apart.
Actually,
but you fight, and when you are about to win, and then you run away.
Bob Marley said something.
Yes.
Bob Marley said that he who fights and run away
lives to fight again.
Another
Some
day.
people never have the opportunity to fight again.
Okay, if we decide to calm down at this point in time, I'll tell you what I heard the SDF Parliamentary Group leader say. He's called Joseph Banadjem. He explained to the taxpayer-funded Cameroon Radio and Television yesterday that Webar's absence from Parliament is almost a non-event, because he's not the only absentee. He actually says many MPs were also absent. But I thought to myself, this is curious, because they both come from the same part of Cameroon, and he's better placed to know. Now let's rush over to Kumbo. Lambert Kiven, are you online?
Good morning, Divine. Good morning to Elie Smith and our guest in the studio.
He's called Mancho, Michael. So how is Kumbo doing this morning?
Kumbo is there. A lot of heat, cool at the same time. There's too much heat, and at the same time there is a cool at the same time. So we are in the type of a locally created climatisé that I don't know how to explain.
That's the air conditioner. Kumbo is noted, the inhabitants of Kumbo are noted for, rising temperature. Sometimes, but it's always the extremes. When it gets cold, it's really cold, and when it gets hot, it's really hot. And that characterizes the individuals who are resident in Kumbo. That is not, however, our talking point this morning. Lambert, you all know, we are talking about the 2017 open of the parliamentary session, the first ordinary session. And the question I'll ask you up front is, are the people in Mancho, are they manifesting any interest in what's going on in Parliament?
Divine, a very technical and a very, very good question. You know, the people in Kumbo, since the Prime Minister left Kumbo last week, are still very little bit. Some of them, they are very disappointed.
Okay.
I am saying exactly what they are saying. I am not the one who is speaking because Kumbo is a very technical place when it comes to journalism. And you know, the way I am, I don't even know whether I am safe or I'm not. But as a journalist,
we sincerely think that you are safe until you run yourself into trouble, which is not our wish, Lambert.
That is it. So, since the Prime Minister left Kumbo last week, there's a lot of tension where other people are for the fact that the principal of the main school, that is GBHS Kumbo, who spoke, who instead congratulated the Prime Minister and asking parents and to come back to send their children to school so that the government will take the next step. And equally the principal of another school, that is of another GBHS, GBHS Kumbo, said the same thing, congratulating the Prime Minister and asking the parents to send their children to school so that something can be done, that the government has done their effort and it is now left in the hands of the parents.
Okay.
Nevertheless, about the issue of the parliamentary session this time around, so many questions are being asked. Where is our honorable Weber?
I was going to come there. Have you seen him around town? Where is he?
No, not at all. Not at all. Even the line to get to him is very tough. I just spoke with the secretary a few minutes ago before I was coming on air, and it is clear that he is nowhere to be found. Even the secretary does not know where he is, the private secretary.
Okay.
You know what that means? So he is escaping for his dear life. I want to think so.
But are you sure? Are you sure that he's traveled to Nigeria and then on to the US? Can you say that? Can you confirm that?
That is exactly the information I'm getting. It is still unconfirmed because I'm so close to the secretary in a way that
Okay.
if the secretary does not even know where he is, then it is questionable. Nevertheless, the way it is, the way the tension is, he started the war anyway. He started the resistance. I think he could have been resisting as of now, but since somebody's life being the way it is, you have to escape for your dear life.
So in Kumbo, do they consider him a coward? Because on the panel with us, Michael Mancho actually considers him a runaway.
You know, some people in Kumbo, they are saying he's a coward. Some are rather saying that he has gone to prepare for the final thing that will happen when he comes out. So maybe he is somewhere that he's preparing himself to come out in another dimension, in a different model,
Okay.
to attack the system to see what can happen. That is what I'm getting from the people.
Thanks very much, Lambert, for the tip-off. Finally, have schools resumed in Kimbo?
The answer is a big no. No 3 times. No in the sense that I am beside or below the Islamic high school. That is where I take my example. No school, no student can be seen. It is only in some few schools that teachers are carrying on private classes. And it is very technical because they have, according to some of those students, they have told them, they have informed them not to tell anybody wherever they are going to. Because they are coming to school not in uniform, but rather in their normal dresses. And that is why some schools that I don't want to call names here, they are carrying on, except for the bilingual schools that Anglophones or Francophones, they are the Francophone department, they are Francophone section of the schools, they are dressing in their uniform. Some schools, not all, but as of now, the percentage is not up to 25%.
All right, I think that's bad news for those preparing to organize the GC exams.
Very bad.
We'll have to leave it there, Lambert Kiven, and hook up with you again on Thursday at the same time. Thanks very much, bros.
Thanks for the trust.
It's a pleasure to have had you on the program. And that's how we begin to, call it quits on this other edition of Toughtalk. But we cannot go away without briefly mentioning what is going to happen in Parliament in the coming days. I think it's supposed to happen this week, the election of executive members of parliament. Some say, Elie Smith, it's a mere formality. The die has been cast.
Yeah, I think it's a mere formality. I think at some point he said something here which is really remarkable but painful, that everything is decided by the executive, whereas we think or we thought that if we were a democracy as we pretend we are, or we pretended or we are pretending to be. It wouldn't have been a formality. There would have been some top fight. We would have seen even some carpet crossings, but it is not going to happen.
There's been talk of likely changes, including a likely election or designation, Mancho Michael, of an Anglophone at the helm of either the Senate or the National Assembly. This would be like appeasing the Anglophones, because if you take Prime Minister Philemon Yang, well, he ranks far behind in terms of state protocol rankings.
And I asked myself, I also saw that was, I think, the Guardian Post. And we were talking about Honorable Emilia, if I can becoming the new Speaker of the National Assembly. I asked myself, is that what Anglophones are asking? I don't think that would be a further mockery, because when you look at people and they even talk about a person like Emilia sometimes, who is not even accepted in the Southwest region, of course, we should know that.
Is she going to be accepted by the whole Anglophone?
I think that would be digging already a wound that is oozing. I think we should be very, very careful how we handle this crisis. And I said, some of the steps that we take may further deepen the crisis. Okay. We need to be very, very careful. Let us it needs to be flexibility on the side of the government, on the side of the Anglophones. I think, and it's only through flexibility that it should be solved. We should not go on chasing the wind, as I've already said. You go on making an appointment, and what good does that appointment do to the people? Like, people complain that Philemon Yang has not been in the village for 2 years, and then he's coming back. So, I think that this is a mockery. What is of use is our appointment to our people.
Okay.
Fine, that is the question.
Thanks very much, Mike and Mancho, for coming. We'll tell you goodbye in a jiffy. But Elie Smith, Kavayege Jibril has been Speaker of the National Assembly since 1992. This is like his house. He's a landlord.
Yes, it's one more indication, or many indications that it is a dictatorship. Because how do you expect someone to have such a longevity at the head of a parliament that is supposed or is alleged to be democratic?
In 2007, he was challenged by fellow CPDM Member of Parliament Adama Modi, and some say Adama Modi currently today is chasing his own very shadows for having mustered such audacity to challenge the sitting Speaker, Kavayege Jibril. And it's on that note, thanks, Elie Smith.
You're welcome.
We'll be here Thursday,
God willing.
Thanks, Mike and Mancho, for coming.
It's a pleasure, Divine.
You're still a student, are you?
I'm finishing up with my program.
Thanks very much. God bless you, and thanks sincerely for coming to share your thoughts with us. See you the same time on Thursday. Up next is The Papers with Dee Maureen. She's back.